Hello, third grade. It's Mrs. Taranja with the Citizenship Academy. We are on Unit 7, Astronomy. We're going to read a chapter today called Nikolaos Copernicus. How would you like to present the world with a new idea about how something works? What if besides being new, your idea was so different from the ideas that people had believed for so long that people were opposed to even listening to your ideas? That kind of fierce opposition is exactly what a man named Nikolaos Copernicus experienced hundreds of years ago when he had a new idea about astronomy. Nikolaos Copernicus was a regular person just like you. He was born in Poland in 1473 and was raised by his uncle because both of his parents died when he was about 10 years old. Copernicus went to universities in Poland and Italy and became a clergyman and a doctor. Copernicus studied many objects, including math, philosophy, church, law, and medicine. But his favorite subject of all, and the thing that he had a big new idea about, was astronomy. As you have learned, astronomy is the study of stars, space, and the universe, and astronomers are scientists who study these amazing phenomena. Long before Copernicus was born, the Greek philosopher Aristotle observed that the sun appeared to rise in the east and set in the west. Because Aristotle observed this diurnal motion of the sun with his own eyes, he and many others believed that the earth was stationary and that the sun and all the planets orbited around it. These observations and the strong belief in the way of looking at the universe shaped people's views for a very long time. For more than 1,000 years before Copernicus was born, most astronomers and other people believed that the universe was geocentric. In other words, scientists thought the Earth was the center of the solar system and the universe. They believed Earth stood still and the sun and all the planets and the moon circled around it, while the stars remained fixed in a rotating sphere that was farther away. You have learned that most people believed the geocentric theory of the universe for more than 1,000 years. Why? Because it was the best explanation anyone had come up with for why the sun and planets appeared to move the way they did. All of our observations were from Earth. Remember, people did not have all the scientific tools back then that we have today, such as artificial satellites, spaceships, and high-powered telescopes. These tools have greatly expanded modern understandings of space through new opportunities for observation and gathering data. Think about the difference between a person standing on Earth looking around and a person in an airplane looking down on an earthbound person. The person in the airplane can see a much wider scope of Earth. Powerful telescopes have given us this new kind of perspective when we look up into space. Most Greeks, including the famous philosopher Aristotle, believed the geocentric theory. There were a few exceptions, such as the Greek astronomer Aristarchus, who, after much studying, concluded that the sun was much larger than Earth, and it was the Earth that moved around the sun. His new idea, called a hypothesis, was never accepted by ancient astronomers, but after many, many years, Aristarchus' ideas greatly influenced the other astronomers in their studies. Most ancient Romans believed in the geocentric theory. During this time, it was the official position of the powerful Roman Catholic Church. Most astronomers were afraid to question it or explore other hypotheses. Though there were others before Copernicus who were trying to work out an alternative explanations. When Copernicus was born in 1473, almost everyone in Europe believed in this geocentric theory too, and almost everyone had no idea that this view of the universe was about to change. How could so many people have a completely different view of the universe that we do today? The answer is easy. All of what we know about the way the universe works, all the science, comes from the observations and logical thinking of regular people, just like you and me. Astronomers have always used scientific theories to explain the movement of the stars and planets. Scientific theories aren't necessarily complicated or hard to understand. They are just possible explanations of how or why things happen. But remember, scientific theories aren't just guesses. They are ideas that are based upon evidence and careful observation of the world, such as observing where the stars appear in the sky every night. Sometimes, however, what we think about we are seeing is not what it actually is, such as the world looking flat but actually being round. A long time ago, stargazers spent a lot of time outside looking at the night sky and noticed patterns in the sky. Early astronomers knew that the planets had different movements than the stars which circled around Polaris once a day. Astronomers observed that the planets moved slowly across the night sky along a certain pathway. But people had also started noticing some odd things about the motion of the planets as they followed these pathway. One of these odd things was that sometimes Mars and other planets made a strange backward loop in the sky. Scientists had tried to explain this motion using the geocentric theory of the universe, but the explanations became pretty complicated. Still, most people didn't question that Earth was the center of the universe. But Copernicus asked himself the question, if the planets were orbiting around Earth, why would they follow such complicated patterns? He didn't think they would, and so he used his logical mind to come up with a different scientific hypothesis that would better explain this strange looping motion. Copernicus also had the work of Aristarchus long before to add to his own studies. In science, often the work of one scientist is built upon the work of many scientists who have come before him or her. What was the scientific hypothesis that Copernicus decided upon? It was the heliocentric hypothesis of the universe. Does this sound familiar? This was the hypothesis of Aristarchus more than 1,000 years earlier. By using mathematics to make careful calculations of the position of the sun, planets, and other celestial bodies, Nikolaos Copernicus came to the same conclusion, that the sun was the center of everything. He believed that Earth orbited around the sun along with the rest of the planets. Copernicus also hypothesized that the Earth is spinning and rotates on its own axis. Of course, we now know that the Earth does rotate on its axis. And we also know that although the sun isn't the center of the universe, it is the center of our solar system. So this heliocentric scientific hypothesis Copernicus presented in the 1500s that was built upon the scientific hypothesis of Aristarchus had presented more than 1,000 years earlier, was much closer to the truth than the geocentric theory that had been held for so many years. Unfortunately, similar to Aristarchus, Copernicus's hypothesis was not widely accepted by people during his lifetime. For one thing, people thought that if the Earth was spinning, all the things on it would be thrown off the Earth and into space. They didn't understand that the force of gravity holds us firmly on Earth. Another part of the reason for this is that Copernicus's ideas were not published until literally the day he died. But another part of the reason that the heliocentric hypothesis was not widely accepted was that Copernicus's ideas challenged the belief held by most people that humans were at the center of the universe. This was very difficult for many people to accept, so change came slowly. Still, as with the studies of Aristarchus, the studies of Copernicus greatly influenced the astronomers who came after him, including the great Italian astronomer Galileo Galilei. Galileo was inspired by the work of Copernicus and became one of the first astronomers to build and use a telescope to study space in more detail. As you heard earlier, Galileo discovered 4 of Jupiter's moons. He observed that the moons orbit Jupiter instead of Earth. His discoveries provided further evidence that Aristarchus and Copernicus were, although in great minority, correct in their heliocentric theories. Nikolaos Copernicus had made careful observations of the stars and other celestial bodies. He recorded these observations with great attention, but it is his willingness to ask questions, even when unpopular, that led him to a clearer answer. Each time you ask questions to help understand something better, you're following in the footsteps of the great philosopher Nikolaos Copernicus. Asking questions to get closer to the truth is what the scientific process is all about. Copernicus's questioning mind and careful observations led him to a new hypothesis about the arrangement of what we now know as a solar system. Though people were slow to accept his hypothesis, the astronomers who followed Copernicus gathered more and more evidence, so that today the heliocentric view is the accepted theory. It's important to remember that new information and evidence often change our views about the world.